Everyone to Bowtie Security Guy After Dark. This is episode 21, I think, which is kind of crazy to think about. My guest today is Chad Butler. Chad, I just want to start off with why did you get into technology, or what kind of drove you to this field? Tell me a little bit about your career.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, technology in general, I've always just kind of been fascinated by computers, building my own computers when I was a kid, trying to network my computer in my room with the family computer over coax at the time, which was a super frustrating experience. And then just, I don't know, like security has always been something I've been interested in. I remember getting on like old school bulletin board systems and downloading text files and the Rogers handbook and all that stuff, learning how to lockpick and build beige boxes and do all of those fun things. And so that was kind of my earliest introduction to it. And then I think the first time I really got into security as a job, probably, I first started working as help desk, Packard Bell back in the day, and then I got a sysadmin job. And I remember my first day, they're like, "Hey, this is our firewall. It's running on this Linux box, and it's been hacked, so we need to replace that." And that was like my first introduction to, oh man, that's kind of cool. Somebody hacked this Linux system that was also running the firewall. How did they do that, and how do I prevent them from doing it? So that's kind of how I got into it.
Only security people get excited about breaches. I try to explain that
Right.
to someone. Same with viruses, right? When I did malware
Yeah.
analysis, I was always like, "Oh man, this one's really cool.
It's amazing.
This one does all kinds of weird stuff." So, how did you break into cyber as your first gig? Like now, I think breaking into technology and cyber is incredibly hard, and I definitely want to talk about the program and stuff that you're kind of offering as
Yeah.
well as the free help you're offering people who are struggling to kind of do this. But like, how did you break into technology and that like cyber? You did the help desk route, but then how did you end up pivoting into your first like official cyber gig?
Yeah. So I was doing sysadmin work, for a while, and it was through a human connection, and so I feel like I got lucky, but also it was through the people I knew, and so the story is, I went to some IT conference and there was an FBI agent who spoke, and he's like talking about the things that they were doing, and he's like, "Hey, the cyber field is really big right now. If you're at all interested in joining the FBI, come and talk to me." And I was like, "That sounds awesome." So I went and talked to him, and for the next year and a half, I think, I was working on applying at the FBI, went through all the steps and everything. And at a certain point, I was like, I like this is cool, but I'm not sure it's right for me. I was a family guy, had kids. And I'm like, I don't know
Yeah,
if I
that
want to go
it's not
spend five
conducive
months
to
at
the
Quantico,
FBI
right?
lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the time, I had a neighbor who had just moved from DC, and I knew he did something. I didn't know if it was CIA or NSA or whatever. And so I went over and I'm like, "Hey, I applied at the FBI, and I just want to pick your brain. Like, what do you think? Is it a good field? Whatever." And he kind of gave me some high level recommendations. And then a couple days later, it was funny. Like, we had this massive outage at the data center I worked at, and I ended up working basically around the clock. And so he calls me, and it's like 11 in the morning, and I'm still in bed because I've been up all night. And it's like, "Hey, I didn't know you were interested in security. I lead this small team, and we're hiring. Why don't you come apply for this?" And I was like, "Dude, your timing is immaculate. I will do anything, you know, anything other than work at this data center that was really destroying my sleep habits at the time with all
Yeah.
the pages." And so I went and interviewed, and the rest is history. It turned out to be my first gig, and got a lot of experience and training from that. But it started because I'd spoken with somebody who, at the time I didn't even know he led a security team. And it just so happened that it led to my first role in security.
Was that like, so you did the secure engineering stuff, and then it looks like early in your career you were able to kind of pivot into leadership. What kind of drove the move into leadership? I always tell people like most technical leaders are like, "Hey, you're really good at being technical. Now go lead some people." But I mean,
Yeah.
was it an active decision or were you kind of voluntold like I think a lot of us are that's like, "Hey, you're going to lead this team now."
It was kind of active. I mean, so that first job I had, I had some introduction to it. We had a team intern and a volunteer. And so my manager at the time was like, hey, you have inklings for management. Let's try this. And so I did I managed the intern, in air quotes. And it was a really good experience. I found that I loved kind of the mentoring aspect and helping people grow and all of that stuff. And so when I moved to Concur, which was up in Seattle or Bellevue at the time, um, I hired on, and I think like a month and a half in, or maybe 2 months in, my manager who hired me on announced that he was leaving. And I was like, well, that sucks. I wish I would have known that, before to weigh it into my decision to take this job. Um, and so they started looking for a new manager. And at one point, I was just like, like maybe I should throw my hat in the ring. And so I went to my manager's boss, who was functioning as the CISO for Concur at the time, and I was like, hey, um, that open manager's position, I think I might be interested in that. Do you think I'd be a good fit? And apparently he did, because he took that as like he just started running with it, and he set up meetings for me
Congrats.
to meet with leaders and like, explain how I would approach it. And like he just basically laid out the path for me, which looking back, I'm like, that never happens. I was super fortunate
It's
to have somebody that advocated for
so,
me.
so rare.
Yeah.
Many times like overachievers and people who like killed themselves at their job, which I think a lot of us in technology get like that overachiever mentality just because of the dopamine hit and the constant like drive for
Yeah.
perfection. They they're rewarded with more work, and when promotions come they're like, well, you're too valuable to promote you because like we'd have to replace you with like two people, so we're just going to
Yeah.
leave you where you're at. And I know, I think I did that to myself for a very long time where I kept trying to go into leadership, but I was told, quote unquote, like they can't lose me, and I'm like, to me it was very disheartening. So to have a path opened up like that led to your kind of leadership career. And you and we met at Disney, and I instantly thought you were awesome because you're a service leader like I
Likewise.
am, which is,
Yeah.
it's so rare. I mean, in all
Hmm.
honesty, there is a lot of bosses, there's not a lot of leaders.
Right.
um
And
what
it gets
kind of
higher the more senior you get, right?
Yes,
It's less
yeah.
and less. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me, like how that changes and how that mindset kind of changes as you continue to go up. Like as an executive now for the first time in my career for the last several years now, I don't feel in many cases that I fit the mold of what it is,
Hmm.
right?
I
Because
hear you.
I'm very people focused and very people first, which is how you are also. And I'm lucky
Hmm.
enough now to work for two like great leaders. I don't think they listen to my stuff, but like I'm just specifically saying I'm lucky enough to work for two service leaders. So it's kind of awesome, but I've never had
Yeah.
that in my career. I mean,
Yeah.
what's some advice that you kind of give to people who are looking to kind of move into that leadership path and kind of take those steps in their career? And what are some things that you think they can do? Because my advice is don't work as hard. And it sounds counterproductive, but when you're the top performing employee, the odds of you getting promoted are pretty slim with most companies, unfortunately,
Hmm.
because they don't
Yeah.
want to lose you from that top capacity, which is illogical. I don't run my teams that way, but What's some advice that you would give to somebody who's kind of looking to make that jump into leadership? And even now, like, what does that even look like with this current career? Like, and this current,
Yeah,
job market?
climate. And so every time somebody asks me that, I always start by saying, is this something you really want to do, or is it just something that you feel like
It's
that's the
career
natural
progression. Yeah, yeah.
progression, right? Because it used to be that way. You know, topped out at a certain point, and if you wanted to make more, you had to go into leadership or management. That's
Yep.
not the case anymore, fortunately. And so I would always talk to people like, what are your motivations? Why do you want to do this? Because if you really like just building and doing technical work, you're going to get further and further away from that the
Yep.
farther down the leadership path you go, and your skills are going to get duller and duller as you go,
They're gonna
which
they're
makes it
gonna
hard to
very
switch
much
back.
atrophy. Yeah, it
Yeah,
does. And
yeah,
the other thing too is it becomes apparent very quickly how fast those skills atrophy, where you go,
yeah.
hey, why don't we do this? Or like, why would I do that? And you're like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Please forgive me. So once you determine you're in it for the right reasons, which is the same thing I do too, is like, what is your motivation? What are those next steps that you would give to somebody who's trying to take that leadership path to move into that next opportunity?
I would say, in all cases in career progression, you've got to advocate for yourself. I mean, I think it's pretty rare that somebody's going to come to you and say, "Hey, we want you to do this job. Congratulations, you're awesome." Yeah, I mean, even in my case, like if I hadn't gone to my skip level and said, "Hey, I'm kind of interested in this job," he never would have run with it. I had to kind of plant the idea in his head.
Yeah.
And because I had built up a rapport with him, he ran with it, and that was great. But I think you've got to ask, you've got to have those conversations, go to your manager, let them know that you're interested in it, and look for opportunities. Leadership isn't all about leading people. Maybe it's like, hey, I want to go and figure out this project or this program and get it, managed or whatever. Or, like in my case, my first experience was with an intern. If your team has an intern, be like, hey, I want to be this intern's whatever team buddy or
Yeah.
the intern's manager or whatever. You can do those things, and that's valid experience. And so look for those opportunities and sign up for them, volunteer for them, because I mean, let's face it, everybody has more work than they can do. And so if you're a leader and somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to take on helping the intern," like you're probably not going to tell them no, right? If they want to do
No.
it, you probably need help. You're gonna take them up on it. So
For sure. I think having that kind of conversation too, but also knowing whether or not your leader is even going to be somebody who's going to support you. Like
yeah,
if you don't think that support's there, it's probably time to just start looking for another opportunity or another job within maybe within your company. But I know right now it's so incredibly, incredibly hard to do that. You and I have both been in a situation of a layoff. We,
yep.
we've we've both been in this market and found it to be less desirable.
It's
um,
putting it mildly.
then yeah, yeah. I mean, absolute sucks. It was probably more accurate. I basically had to become a social media personality to get a job, right?
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
that to me is insanity. Like you're doing like you've worked some awesome places. You worked at Amazon. You worked on some really cool projects there. You worked at Disney with me, and then you worked in the finance space for a little bit. And now I see you're kind of branching out of your own. Like, what's
Hmm.
driving that? Is it just the market in general, or is it like I'm tired of being somebody else being my boss, or is it, just something that you've always wanted to do?
A little bit of both. It's something that I've always wanted to do. And I was just kind of like waiting for the right time, right? Which never comes. And except for when I got laid off, that was the right time. No, so for the first maybe 2 months, I panic applied. I'm like, I got to get a
Yeah.
job before the severance and the runs out, and before I have to start paying Cobra and all those things. And 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 so I got to. I mean, the interview process was just awful. Like it was worse than I've ever experienced, and it's probably gotten worse since then. So I'm
I have
empathetic to
mentees
that.
who don't meet with humans anymore. They meet
Yeah,
with an AI.
yeah, that's awful. So I went through this process, and I kind of I got to final rounds for a couple of what I would call junior CISO roles. It was kind of their first CISO. It was leading a very small team, kind of doing
Mhm.
everything. And in both cases, they both sounded really interesting. And then as we got further into it, I started asking the pointed questions, and I realized like this is going to be just like the thing I just left. For the first 12 months or 18 months, it's going to be awesome. And then, maybe 9 or 10 months in, something's going to change, and I'm going to lose all of my support and all of my
Yeah,
funding and all of my headcount. And the next, 2 to 3 years, because you don't want to job hop that quickly, is going to be an exercise of frustration, beating my head against the wall, um, and burning out. And I was like, why am
yeah.
I doing this? And and fortunately, I had a mentor at the time who's like, was like, dude, you're not that smart, are you? And we're having a bowl of poke together, and I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not that smart. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm that smart, but what do you mean? And he's like, you keep doing the same thing,
I'm
expecting a
expecting
different
different
result.
results. Yeah,
I'm
the
like,
definition of
yeah,
insanity.
okay. And he's like, look, you know, you could go out and consult and do a lot better than any employer is going to pay you. And you could do it. And so I'm like, all right, I guess it's time. I'm going to try this. And um, it's been slow, but I'm enjoying the stuff I'm working on, and I get to choose projects that actually help people, and I
Right.
don't have to attend useless meetings or fight political battles. And so it's like just for my mental health, it's been amazing. Not necessarily
I,
financially, but yet,
I, I,
it's that's
I,
coming.
I think that's a good point, right? Is the mental strain of technology and cyber is
Yeah,
rough. I mean,
it is.
and I try to tell people, like, especially a lot of these kids who are getting out of college, a lot of them who listen to this podcast, it's not going to be a really high paid job anymore. Like, you're going to get an entry level role for 50 to maybe 80K. I
Yeah,
mean, you can make that much as a manager at Wawa. So are you getting into it for the right reasons? I mean,
yeah.
what's some of the, advice that you give to these younger kids who are like, I want to go into cyber, because I'm having a harder and harder time recommending this as a career path,
Yeah,
because it's the entry level roles are going to be pretty hard to find because AI is starting to replace a decent amount of them. Companies are starting to double down in the AI space and removing jobs at a very rapid pace. You have a job market right now with 700,000 people in cybersecurity and technology who are unemployed, who are chasing that same entry level job and that same role
yeah.
that you're looking for. Because, like you said, they're panic applying to anything because they want to be employed again. So, what is that advice that you would give to somebody who's doing it? And I'm segueing a little bit into some of the stuff that you're doing with your career hacking quest. So, like, feel free to kind of talk about what you're doing there, and also just any advice that you have for new people or people who are thinking about going into this field about the mental struggles as well as the sacrifice that they have to make.
So I honestly see a lot of parallels between what's going on today and this situation that was happening when I first got into tech. And I first started getting into it right after the dot-com bust,
First,
um,
yeah,
early 2000s. And at the time, there were all sorts of boot camps that promised if you go and get your Microsoft or your Cisco certifications, you can make six figures. And so, all of these people were leaving, their good jobs to go and chase their Microsoft and Cisco search so they could, magically make six figures. And then of course the bottom fell out of the market and that promise didn't materialize. So my advice is, uh, you know, these market things happen and eventually it corrects. There were still people hiring then. There are still people hiring now. It's lopsided, but eventually the people who did the boot camps and were just after the money, they eventually went back to their jobs and things equalized again, right? And so if you really want to get into this and you love it, stick with it. Do whatever you can. If that's taking a help desk job and volunteering for all the cybersecurity stuff, do that. Do whatever it takes. I'm maybe an unfounded optimist, but I think it will recover. The market will right itself, and we'll figure this out. But we've got a lot of chaos in the market right now, and it's nobody has a crystal ball, so we don't know how long it's going to take or what the winning factor is going to be. But there are still people hiring, and to your point, I relaunched this career hacking quest course, and the thing that I see people doing is just, spray and pray, send out as
Yeah.
many resumes and applications to as many jobs as possible. And I don't think that particularly works. Like you look at that, that's kind of the script kiddie approach of hacking, whereas the
It totally is.
the approach that works is I'm gonna case this organization for months. I'm gonna figure out what makes them tick, and then when I deliver an exploit, it's gonna be perfectly tuned to them so that it works. And I know it's gonna work because I've tested it. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the approach you've got to take is, instead of applying to hundreds of jobs, find the one that you really want and just like go after it. Be relentless and do the reconnaissance, do the you know use your social engineering tricks, like do all of those things because everybody else is not taking that time.
Nope.
They're playing
They're
a
just
numbers game
and
and
they're
they're getting
blasting
lost
stuff
in the
out.
AI. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and that's the thing. I always tell people, what did you do after you applied? And the answer is pretty much, nothing, right? I just
yeah,
waited. For me, when I was in the job market, I would apply. I would find every single person I could find in that company and their recruiting, and I would connect with them. Then I would send an intro video. It's like, hey, what's
yeah,
going on? I'm Rob. Here's some things that I'm looking for. Just wanted to set some time up to meet you. I'd love some time, to bend your ear, just to get to know people, like building those
yeah,
relationships. Because if you're not putting effort into soft skills, if you're not putting effort into networking, it's going to be a very, very hard struggle, I think,
yeah,
because all of us know someone unemployed. And as soon as someone comes to us with an opportunity, the first thing we do is go to our network of people that we know.
yeah,
And if you're
yeah,
hiring internal, like I'll probably have a role opening up um, at a junior level, and I don't even know how we're going to handle that because I've got a ton of people internal who are going to apply for it. I've got people who are on the team who have friends of friends that want to apply for it. And then your average
yeah.
entry level role gets 1,700 applications. So it's like it can be very difficult to find that diamond in the rough or to give everyone a fair shake.
Yeah.
So you've done something kind of cool. So you've created your Mission InfoSec, which is basically you're the CEO, and tell me a little bit about kind of how you pivoted into building your own kind of company, for lack of anything better, that helps companies and things like that. What was the inspiration for doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I've done consulting in the past, and so my first initial thought was, well, I'll go do AppSec or pen test consulting, um, which was fun, and it was something I could do that paid the bills. Um, but I've always enjoyed teaching, and I've always enjoyed
Yeah.
helping mentor people, and so this career hacking quest course is actually one I put together probably 2 years ago because that's when all the layoffs were happening. Um, and so that was fun. But then I was like, um, I kind of sensed that DevSecOps was not going anywhere, and I had an experience with my previous team where I had some really strong AppSec people, but they didn't know how to like script. They didn't know how to integrate their,
Yeah.
their tools into the pipelines. And so we were totally blocked on other people, other busy teams to, implement our stuff so that we could meet our goals and make an impact. And so I was like, you know what, we need more people who know how to do this. And so that's when I developed the second course. And the idea was you can get this type of training from like SANS, but you're going to spend like $9,000 on it. And the SANS courses I've
If
taken
you're
have all been
lucky.
great if you're
Yeah, yeah,
lucky. Yeah. But you spend like 40 hours in a classroom. And I always come away from that like, this was great. But what I learned was really in like 2 or 3 hours. I wish I could have just got that,
yeah, yeah,
and not
yeah,
had to spend the whole time. So I developed this course with the idea of I want it to be digestible, I want it to be affordable, something that somebody can self-fund. And my hope is that, I can sell a bunch of these for, you know, a few dollars, a couple $100, as opposed to just a few of them for $9,000, and it'll help more people, and
yeah.
maybe it'll help me pay the bills in the process.
Well, one of the things you were offering is kind of like you said, kind of joining is free, and there's free videos and stuff that are part of it. And honestly, I've watched some of them. You've showed me a lot of them, getting my feedback and stuff when you were going through this originally.
Yeah.
Um, they're awesome, and I
Thank
just
you.
want people to know that there's this free content out there, and a lot of people are trying to help. And you're one of those people who like, yeah, you're in a bad situation. You're trying to make the best of your bad situation. Um, but you're also giving back to people and trying to help. What is like the free stuff that you offer that's part of that, and what can people kind of expect when they kind of, mess with the career hacking quest and what's available?
Yeah, so that's totally free. It's you sign up, you go to www.careerhackingquest.com, and give me your email. You'll get your login credentials, and then you can log in. I can't remember how many videos. It's just right around 2 hours total of content. So it's something that you can spread out, do on your lunch break or whatever over the
Yeah,
course of a couple weeks. There's also a community with it, so kind of a discussion board. I post jobs. When I see something that interests me, I'll post it there. But then I'm also doing biweekly resume feedback sessions, because one of the things I hear from people is they're like, how do I know if my resume is working? Because I'm getting no feedback from the people that are interviewing me or that I'm applying for. And so I've been doing this for a long time. I've looked at thousands of resumes, interviewed hundreds of people. And so what I do is I'll say, okay, we've got an hour. Let's pick 4 resumes, and I'm just going to go through them and just off the cuff, first impressions. If I was a hiring manager, and so I'm just going to go through it and just like speak out what I'm seeing as I'm going through it, with the idea that somebody should be able, like, oh, okay, well, this is what that person that's reviewing my resume is going to think when they first look at my resume. And I think that's valuable, because it's not going to be filtered. Like I'm not going to get sued if I give you bad advice, right? I'm just trying to help. I'm not
right.
I'm not part of a corporate HR team that has to follow those policies. And
Yeah.
so I can tell you, like, your format needs to be improved, or whatever. Like, um, and so I feel like I hope that that's a benefit to people to get that
I,
advice
I
and just
I
kind of
think
off
it
the cuff
is, and
feedback.
the fact that you're offering it for free and offering your time for free. Now, granted, of course, you offer one-on-one type stuff for a small fee. Compared to others, it's a small fee.
Yeah.
I mean that sincerely.
Yeah.
Some of the charges and things that people charge for this is crazy. One of the things that I see most common, which you've never done, which is why I was like, hell yeah, when you saw this, I was like, you should come hang out on the podcast. Let's talk about what you're doing, because you're doing a lot of stuff for free, you're doing a lot of stuff to help out. There are other options if you want more one-on-one coaching, but just being able to get resume feedback, even from other people's resumes, to see what somebody
Right.
thinks that has looked at resumes, that has done hiring, that has been a hiring manager, is invaluable.
Yeah.
Absolutely invaluable. And in this market, it's so important that you're not relying on your resume. Like it's important to have a
Yeah.
good resume, but if you're relying on it, you're already behind the eight ball. You've got to
Yeah.
figure out a way to get in front of people to get them to notice that you got your hand up and that you're jumping up and down,
Yes.
just, pick me, pick me, pick me. Um,
Yeah.
because you're only going to be able to interview maybe 10 to 15 people for every role that you open, like just time wise.
Yep.
So the odds are incredibly against you. But what I'd like to tell people is like, hey, don't get discouraged by the numbers that you see on LinkedIn because they're not always accurate. uh,
Yeah.
they'll be like 200 people applied, and like I look at my back end system, I'm like, I have 60 resumes. Like, there's definitely not 200
Right.
people that applied. There's 200 people that clicked on the link was like, I don't really feel like filling this out, and then bailed on it.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's kind of
but
like when
you've
you're
done a
looking at your
lot.
house on Zillow and you're like,
Yeah,
I don't know if my
totally.
house is worth that much.
Will somebody give that to me today? Because maybe I will move.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like you've done so much to continue to give back. Even when I was laid off, you like reached out and you're like, hey, and for my mentees too, like your courses that you were charging for, you sent me codes. You're like, if somebody's struggling and they can't afford it, I got them.
Right.
That type of person we need more of. We need more Chads and we need more people like us who are trying to get back to a community because everyone is really struggling. And I love the idea that you're trying to kind of create a community because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like security itself is a very small, tight-knit group. For instance, I had
Yeah,
a
it is.
situation recently where I called my buddy because people reach out to us all the time and say, hey, I've got an opportunity. Do you know anyone? Right. Um,
Yeah.
and I called my buddy and I'm like, hey, this is a great job for you. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, oh my gosh, I'm interviewing a guy for that same company right now. And he says the current leadership over there is terrible, and that's why he's leaving. And he's like, we are making an offer to him this week. And I was like, yeah, I heard that they're struggling. That's why they're trying to replace the leadership and get some new people in there. And he's like, that is crazy. Like, because it shows just how small the community truly is.
Hmm.
So we've
Yeah.
got like 6 minutes left. Looking at the current market, I like your optimism. I do not share it, but I like your optimism. Um, because I would love to see things turn around. I'd love to see, entry level roles getting to the 80, $90,000 again. That would be amazing. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be a very long time coming. But what are some things that people can do? Obviously, your course is fantastic. There's a lot of great information there, which we'll share in the link in the video, and then you've also shared while we're talking here. But what are some other things that people can do to kind of stand out in the sea of people, especially when like fatigue is really hard to kind of get past when you're constantly applying?
Yeah. Um, so I think, I mean, in fairness, I think even 3 years ago when the market was really hot, it was still really hard for new
Yeah,
people to break in
competitive
again,
for
right?
sure. Yeah,
Because hiring managers don't want to invest the time to mentor and train somebody, and that's
yeah,
going to be a problem. So I think hiring managers are looking for it's like a what's the word? Anyway, they're looking for somebody that knows how to do the job already, so that they don't have to train them. And the way they determine if somebody knows how to do the job is if they've already done it before, right? And so it's that catch 22. You don't get the
yeah.
experience without the job. You need the job to get the experience. Um, like we're hackers. There are other ways to get the experience that you need.
Yep.
So like for instance, my nephew, he wants to get into cybersecurity, and I'm like, dude, it's going to be really hard. You've got to have the knowledge, but you've also got to have the experience. So I'm like, guess what? You can go form an LLC. You can go to all of the dentists and the chiropractors and whatever, and you can go volunteer, to help them with their cybersecurity.
Yep.
And guess what? That counts for experience. And guess what else? They will probably give you a letter of recommendation because you're helping them. And so, like, look around. There's opportunities to help people. You may
Yeah.
not get paid for it, but it's valid experience. And so if you can, like, if you can reverse engineer your way into being an experienced person, then you're not necessarily competing with the newbies anymore because you've got a portfolio that you can show. And I think, look for those creative alternatives, because
Yeah.
the proven path, so to speak, is pretty saturated right now, and it's
Yeah.
competitive.
Relationships and soft skills. Your technical skills are really important from
Yeah.
doing the job perspective, but for getting the job, soft skills are king, period.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
no one is going to invest in you or take a chance on you if you're not somebody who can have a conversation and can carry a conversation during an interview, period.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
they just and it sucks, right? As someone who's non-neurotypical with autism and ADHD, like it sucks. I had to work very hard where other people it may come naturally, but majority of us in the technical field, and I will say this as a blanket statement, are not neurotypical people. Like we don't go, this is
Mm.
a very weird job. You got to have a kind of
Yeah.
odd mindset to go into it. It's like, hey, I like doing the same stuff over and over again and expecting different results. They're like, welcome to cyber. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that is what we do here. We investigate stuff knowing that it's going to be a false positive, and then we do that 1,000 times over.
Yep.
A lot of the entry level jobs are that way. So I think that's great advice is really trying to find ways around that. Like I always tell people, like if you have a friend or family member with an LLC, have them pay you $10 a month or whatever to do vuln updates and just basic stuff
Yeah.
while you're going to college. That is invaluable experience and it looks good on a resume and shows that you've kind of put yourself out there and kind of grown. It's great to have certs, but I mean, if you can win some hacking competitions, that's cool. Anything to get that visibility. And I always recommend too, just volunteering, right? If you've got an
Yes.
ability to, if you have free time and you're not doing anything, volunteer at like your local B-sides or something like that.
Yep.
But Chad, first, thank you so much for coming to hang out, man. I have been lucky enough to have you as a friend and mentor for many, many years now, and it's been kind of wild to watch your journey and watch what you're trying to do. So I wanted to do my best to support you because I love what you're doing, and the fact that you're trying to give back as much as you can, and still, of course, still trying to make a little bit of cash on yourself. So it's the right approach where many people are offering guarantees. You're offering none of that. You're just saying, "Hey, I'm here to help.
Yeah.
I'm here to try to help you be successful, and I will do everything in my power to do that." And I absolutely love
Yeah.
that, man. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and appreciate what you're doing. I mean, you've been truly leading the way in terms of showing what mentors should be and giving back. So I'm
It's
trying to
it's
follow in your
been weird,
footsteps.
man. I'm not used to having this much visibility constantly, and I both love and hate it. So it's but thank you
Yeah.
so much, man.